And we welcome you to this night shift post-game edition. We're live. Eric Lopez alongside Bryson Turner. As the Knights lose their fifth in a row, first homecoming loss since 2016. They lose 41-28. Coming up, we're going to break down what went wrong. Where does UCF go from here? Kyle Nash is at the stadium. He's currently covering the post-game. Hope to join. He'll join us later on the show. You can send in your comments to us as well. Send your comments over in our chats. Bryce will read them off. We'll read them off for you, ask you to answer some of your questions as well. Of course, follow us on the YouTube page. Subscribe there as well as it on the social medias on X/Twitter. We're on Threads. We're on Facebook. And, of course, blackandgoldbanneret.com. We're gonna talk a lot about our content coming up. And thank you for tuning in because I have a feeling, Bryson, this is the diehard fans that are going to be tuning in right now because the Knights lose 41-28. And it's you've reached that point now, Bryson, where this season's pretty much over. Like, I think a lot of people are going to check out. And as we get into what happened here, if you listen to our podcast that came out Friday, I and Kyle discussed these key factors, Bryson. And I want you to read off each stat that I'm about to mention, okay?
All right.
Time of possession. West Virginia was among the best in the Big 12 at 34 minutes a game. UCF was at 26 going in. I said that's a key stat to follow. How did that end up?
West Virginia, 36.06. UCF, 23.54.
So right around the average, right?
That is a difference of about a little less than 12 minutes, about 12 minutes difference.
Well, and it was 6 minutes ahead in each half. I also said, tell me who wins the rushing battle, and I tell you who wins the game. What was that stat?
West Virginia rushed 50 times for 286 yards. UCF, 33 rushing attempts for 189 rushing yards.
Check West Virginia, those two categories. Now, a stat we didn't bring up, but is always a key factor in these type of games. Turnovers, Bryce. What was the stat for that?
Yes, a good old turnover. So with turnovers, you had UCF gave away the ball 4 times. West Virginia scored 21 points off of those turnovers, while UCF only got 1 turnover and only had 1 play after that turnover.
Unbelievable. That's it. Look at those 3 categories. That's the difference of the game. West Virginia wins comfortably. And as a result, UCF's now 3-5, Bryson. And they're going to have to win 3 of their last 4 just to be bowl eligible. And I don't know. I haven't seen any signs that's going to happen. But those are my thoughts, initial thoughts on the game. We're going to get some comments already coming in here. But what's your initial thoughts, Bryce?
This is really reminding me of, like, I think this is where people are going to realize the cycle. I would argue kind of the quote unquote cycle of like the high that like the hump that sort of started from the Scott Frost era of like 2016. I think that's now officially at this point. I feel like we can call it. Yeah, I know. One thing I learned in economics class is that you don't know you're in a recession until until the National Board of Economic Research calls it a recession, which is usually later. Yeah, this is kind of the point where we realize, oh yeah, we're like, this is like the end. I think we are kind of going through, I think, the end of that hump. Like, because you can argue at least that the past few seasons were still definitely on the good side, even if it wasn't on the highs of 2017 and 2018. But this is where we're coming back to the likes of, like, you know, I don't know if this is not like this isn't 2015 bad, but I mean, I would argue that this is like the dark side of the 2016 season. While the 2016 was a very optimistic type of season, this one,
well, 16 was different in that Scott Frost was in his first year. They were coming off a winless season. People were just happy to win some games. The difference here, the problem is people had expectations. Now, in fairness, there weren't expectations to win the Big 12 or things like that, but I think people thought they can compete in the Big 12, and they have not. They have not. They have lost by it. It's been ugly, and I think that's in particular this game. 2-score loss. Kansas State 2-score loss. I would argue that was more than that. They played well against Oklahoma. Unfortunately, Oklahoma turned out to be an aberration more than a trend. And I think what we've learned is this team cannot stop the run. Cannot stop a team that can actually run the football at all. This team almost gave up 300 yards on the ground again, Bryson. And it's just it's tough. It was tough to watch. And, you turn the ball over. We'll get to John Rice Plumlee in a moment. But this is a team that's a little further away from the Big 12 than I think we thought. And it's going to get harder in the years to come. Let me read some comments because they're coming in. Fallen Hero, the base legend, who's been a longtime follower and listener of the program. Can I get a fan-made jersey that has Plaxico Burress' name on it? Yes, I know he didn't go to UCF, but this team makes me want to shoot myself all the same time. I think UCF did that on their own, shooting themselves in the foot, Bryson. How about the turnovers, man? The interceptions by Plumlee, the fumbles, it was just unbelievable.
Okay, I will say this. Of the 4 turnovers that UCF got this game, I think half of them I don't really put on Plumlee, half of them. The first one was on Javon Baker because he should have caught that ball, and it just he had it in his hands, he lost it, it bounced way up high than I've ever seen a ball do like that. And then West Virginia got it. I do not blame John Rice Plumlee for that one bit. That is a receiver's interception. The second one, John Rice, the second one, I blame a little more on the O-line because the West Virginia defender got right into John Rice Plumlee.
He hit him right as he was about to throw the ball. Right. That was a big moment because UCF had just gotten the turnover. Was that the one on the hook and lateral, which for whatever reason West Virginia ran when? Yeah, that was the one where their quarterback was down. They took him out. They brought the backup in. They run a hook and lateral that they fumbled. And then on the next play, Plumlee gets hit as he throws it and throws a one that just pops in the air for an interception.
Yeah, I do not blame Plumlee specifically for that because he had a defender right in his face. And, I think that's more on the O-line really should have gotten that guy. The other two, though, I don't think there really isn't an excuse for the other two. I don't really see much.
Well, and don't you feel like he lost his confidence too as that went on? Like after 3rd and 4th turnover, he looked a little shaken. Like he could tell he was a little hesitant. I would have gone with McClain, to be honest, because I think he lost his confidence a little bit. They stuck with him. Go figure. But I would have just made a switch because I thought he lost his confidence there at the end.
I think he did. I think a little bit of it. John Rice, I mean, the sad thing is that I think up until that point, John Rice Plumlee was actually having a very good game. We kept talking about how he did not throw an incomplete pass for so long in that game. And the 2 interceptions, those first 2 interceptions, you can definitely, the argument, I would argue like 90% of the time, 90% of people would not blame you for the interceptions that you threw. So basically, you threw no incomplete passes for a majority of the game, but of course, you're still losing. And I think that
the weird thing is, I thought the offense moved the ball well.
Oh my!
All game long, except for the turnovers.
You look at the drive chart. We kept talking about time of possession this whole game. You look at the drives that UCF actually scored. This is the stuff we've been wanting to see all season from their scoring drives. 351, 412, 336, 321. Those are the types of offensive possessions we've been wanting to see from this team the entire season. And of course, the first game that we actually got them, we give up all the interceptions in the world. You look at the difference. Those 21 points off of the turnovers made a difference in this game. It's definitely the turnover. So I would actually argue, Eric, that the quote unquote time of possession wasn't as self-inflicted but
it contributed. It didn't help
in the same way.
But it didn't help.
It was a completely different way. It wasn't about play calling and all that. It was about execution and turnovers. It's an execution time of possession issue versus the play calling time of possession issue.
G. Dot chimes in. What a homecoming. Sheesh. 2016, you said the last time we lost to homecoming?
Yeah,
know
that
we
was
lost.
the Temple. That was the Temple too.
Oh, that was a brutal. I was there. That was the one that had a big lead at the half, and they blew an 18-point lead. PJ Walker, who's now starting for the Browns, throws literally on the last play of the game, a touchdown to win the game for Temple. I was there.
Yep, I brought it up.
At least this one wasn't as painful.
There,
This was just
right there, Temple. Yeah, 25-26, just rough.
Matt J chimes in. JRP looked great, and then it was very clear he lost his mojo. Agree, Matt. 100% agree with you, Matt. That is man. That's what in a lot of ways. Maybe that's kind of John Rice Plumlee's kind of career. Unfortunately, is going to be defined, at least on the football end. Like, he looked great at times, but then he lost his mojo. I agree 100%. I think he's an improved quarterback, but you're right, man. You can't turn the ball over 4 times, regardless of who it is. You're not going to win when you lose the turnover battle like you did there. But that's a great analysis there, Matt. I agree 100%.
One thing I noticed on Twitter is I'm starting to see a little bit of that JRP hate from last season kind of coming back a little.
Oh
bit.
Yeah. You knew that was coming, though.
I want to put that to bed a little bit because, like, first of all, I'm not very good, but we're not fans of dogpiling on a guy in general. Criticize him for the stuff he did on the field, fine, but not just pile on a guy I don't like doing. I feel like that's not the right thing to do with that. With that said, it's clear that he lost his mojo later after he had a really good game. And honestly, I mean, really put yourself in John Rice Plumlee's headspace. You yourself are doing all you can and are having a pretty good game, all things considered, and yet the team is still losing. That kind of thing sort of gets to you, because when you're doing all that you can and it's not working, it's not enough, it can definitely get to a guy. It can get to a guy. So I can see where that headspace is, and unfortunately, he lost the mojo at a point where, arguably they could have come back. In fact, I would say that the point where things completely just went off the rails, and I realized that we're probably going to lose this game. When I first realized we're probably losing this is that first possession of the second half, when they gave up that interception in the very first one of the.
And West Virginia came in, scored to go back up 2 scores. Yeah,
exactly. That was at that point I was like, oh man, we're probably losing this, aren't we? Because because at that point, you give up an interception on that in a late second quarter. That's fine. It was basically a glorified punt. All you did was keep West Virginia off the board. You were still down 3. You get the ball in the second half. It's fine. Not ideal, but fine. But don't take advantage of getting that ball first, and that's when it's like we're not taking advantage of the opportunities we have. And
Nick's chiming in. This might be our Nick. I'm not sure. He's out of state. Probably knew what was coming. On the play where JRP fumbled, did it look like the West Virginia defender jumped off sides and the refs didn't call it? Yeah, I think so, but you can't assume that, and it's still a turnover. It might have been. I remember that even the broadcasters, Eric Collins and our Devin Gardner, the unofficial UCF broadcast team. I mean, they might be here with us the rest of our lives at this rate. It might have been, but sometimes things don't get called. You still got to protect the football. But maybe. I mean, it's just one of those things.
Speaking of penalties, by the way, so I know West Virginia. I will say West Virginia did a really for a majority of the game, did a really good job of keeping it pretty squeaky clean for a majority of the game. I think some of the penalties that UCF got were just not good points to have them at all.
Right, there was a horse collar on a play there by Lawrence, a couple, but I didn't really have an issue. The officiating didn't have a factor in this game. I mean, West Virginia just we're focusing a lot on the Plumlee.
UCF had more total yards than West Virginia. That's how you know the turnovers prove a point, because UCF actually had more yards than West Virginia in this one.
There were some comments on the social media, Bryson, that towards the Black and Gold banner, which you could also, if you can't make us on our chat, you can certainly message us on social media. What were some of you got a couple of responses there?
Yes, we do. So at Dan Has Thoughts said turnovers and really, really, really bad defense. Not too much to talk about.
I agree. I think that I will say this. This is a very simple game to analyze. Very simple game to analyze. I agree 100%.
He at Ebel90 replied to at Dan Has Thoughts by saying turnovers are spirit killers for sure, but for once I'd like to see that front seven step up when hit with adversity.
I mean, yeah.
We might have to ask Kyle Nash that question when he comes on because he's definitely our O-line guru right there. At CB3 Sacks said, I want to deactivate all social media, cancel my cable and internet, and crawl into an underground post-apocalyptic bunker with 4-foot thick steel doors for the next 10 months. No thanks.
I wouldn't do that. I mean,
to be fair, you could still be bowl eligible. I mean, we saw what happened with Kansas State and Houston. I mean,
what happened there? Kansas State blew them out?
Oh, yeah. Shut them out.
All right.
Shut them out. Just absolutely cream them.
Well, here's the good news. The good news is you're not playing a real Big 12 team next week. Cincinnati is at your level, so you can't use the excuse of, oh, we're playing a Big 12 team level, which I'm not sure I completely buy, but that's I'm sure is going to be what people will say. But you have to win the Cincinnati game. You got to win the Houston game. But I don't know anymore. I mean, I'm sure they're saying the same thing over there in Ohio. They're like, we got to win this game. So we'll see what happens. But there's other stuff. Look, I said there's beautiful weather outside right now, my friend.
Yeah.
Florida, it's beautiful.
Eric Edwards says social media is going to be on fire. JRP and Gus until they're both gone. Oh yeah, by the way, I feel so sorry for Gus Malzahn that he loses like this on his birthday. That's not fun. That is not fun at all.
I think it was the first time he's coached on his birthday. Didn't go out well.
No.
Gus ain't going anywhere. He's going through 2027. And, JRP it is what it is, man. It's just kind of a tough spot. Oh. Hey, Nick, don't blame Shaq. I thought Shaq, I mean, I wasn't there. We'll have to ask, but it seemed like Shaq did a good job. In fact, I want Shaq back at more UCF games.
Well, it's funny because UCF football did put out a video of Shaq saying bye, and he said, "See you next year." And I thought, hold on a minute, next year, and you know what? Not a bad homecoming tradition to have Shaq.
Well, now if I'm Shaq's agent, I wouldn't do homecoming. I would just pick one of the easy games. It'll be a night game.
Maybe,
get a win. Get your stuff a win.
It could be a UCF tradition to do it one game a year. Maybe it's homecoming, maybe it's not homecoming. But an annual performance by DJ Diesel would not be a half bad.
I'm all for it. That was the positive. I like Shaq. It was cool. G-Dot makes a funny point. Yeah, the unofficial UCF broadcast team has been way more hopeful about us than what we've shown on the field. Maybe I'm just pessimistic. He's right. In fairness, as much nonsense as we give them, and some of it's deserved, they were very positive. By the way, Eric Collins did not curse on the Plumlee interception. It just sounded like he did. I think he was trying to say, I think he said funky, and it came out the other way around, which is why you probably shouldn't say those words. Who knows? It was not good, but they were very positive. Like, even at the end, I think Devin Gardner's like, Eric, they're capable of winning out every game. I'm like, based on what?
I mean, well, no.
I think they've attached themselves to this team. They've seen them enough, right?
Where they're coming about, though. I do get what they're coming about it, though, because, look, I think what really hurts with this one, and because think about back to 2015, 2016 time period, we knew we stunk. We knew it. But this season, you win the first 3 games, you build up some goodwill, and then you just have it completely tank. And it helped that there was expectations as well. And
which the coaches added to that, all right? That wasn't unfair, realistic expectations. They had it. They had all these transfers. And here's the thing. This is a veteran group. It's not like this is they're going to lose a lot. They're going to lose pieces from this team for next year. They're going to be younger. There's going to be questions at quarterback. There's going to be questions at a lot of positions. Some might say, well, so maybe that's a good thing. Who knows? But
yeah, maybe at this point, you just take a hard reboot in a way.
I think so. Yeah, I do. We don't know any information about people asking about Xavier Townsend. Did you find Bryson? I didn't notice anything beforehand. Nobody said anything. Obviously we saw Whittemore get the punt returns and things like that. Did you catch anything on early on, or I didn't hear a word.
According to according to Stephen, I just looked it up. So Stephen Leonard, who is also among the press corps there at the tournament, he's at the bounce house. He said Gus says Xavier Townsend tried to go but couldn't pregame. Hopes to have him back next week. So sounds like
Injury.
Sounds like some kind of kind of injury. Probably nothing too severe if he hopes to have him back next week. But yeah, so no Xavier Townsend. But to be fair though, I mean the receiving team, the receivers did a really good job.
Yeah, they were fine. This game was not decided by Xavier Townsend not playing. It didn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't. I think honestly, the best thing we can say is that, of course, that popular TikTok sound, enough with the trick plays, Bird, run the dang ball. This UCF, if UCF is anything, I think it's RBU. RJ Harvey and Johnny Richardson are both, I think, are a really good running back tandem to have in that backfield. But you're just not using them enough.
Well, I don't know about that. The problem is not that. The problem is the other team is running it down your throat for like nearly 300 yards a pop. Like what? You got the stats. It's up there in our graphics for those watching. How many yards per carry did West Virginia average? And by the way, if anybody's been a UCF fan for a long time, we have no chance against a multi-versatile quarterback. Like Green did whatever he wanted.
Average yards per rush was 5.7 for both teams.
I thought it was worse defensively. So I mean, they're running the ball well. The problem is they can't. This team is not built to win shootouts in the Big 12, and that's been proven.
Which is what the Big 12 is.
Yeah,
I mean, we knew coming in. That's the whole joke of the Big 12 is that there's no defense, and that it's shootouts all the time.
Well, and that was the thing, right? I think people were hopeful that maybe UCF, who has played defense in the past, could play defense. Nope, not the case. This defensive line was overrated. That's been proven. Their linebackers have not been good as exposed to linebackers. And the secondary, I thought, it plays very tentative at times. Roger Greenberg chiming in. UCF's got to stop turning the ball over and also got to stop getting penalized too. I mean, that's obvious. Yes, I disagree. So that's that. Nick has chimed in. Look, hey, they got to shrink the student section. Most of them who go don't care about football. I was at the game earlier and a group yelled at me for standing during the game. Well, if they're yelling at you for standing, yeah, that's not good. But here's the thing, okay? I want to get into this. I'm sick of this topic. Number one, Bryson Turner. Who pays for the UCF athletics fee?
The students.
What? Say that again, louder for the back, for those in the back.
The student fees. Until the Big 12 money starts rolling in a little bit, UCF is and has always depended on institutional support from the students. And even when the Big 12 money starts rolling in, the student fees might be able to start going to things that maybe like they weren't able to do before, which honestly I think makes them even more important. Like, say, for example, you have all that money coming in. Maybe now you could start paying your people more. Those student fees could potentially go towards paying the people, which could include students, by the way.
And it wasn't like students, by the way, had a say in that. Because I remember when I was a student, that was a hot topic. Because here's the thing, and Bryson, you know this, you're in grad school. I keep reminding people, the majority of the students that go to the university, not just here at UCF, but in general, don't care about the sport. They're there for the academics. I know that's a crazy concept. All right? Okay? So that's the big thing. Number two, this is not the only student section that leaves games early. And I was arguing about this in the chat. You're in Orlando, Florida. Go outside right now. It is beautiful. It's like 80 degrees. If you think an 18 to 19 to 20-year-old wants to just stay at a football game between a team that's under 500 against a 4-3 team for 4 hours, you're crazy. They're not going to do that. They're going to go out. They're going to go out to parties. And I know this because I experienced this as a student. Because I used to be this guy, Bryson. I used to be the guy that, we got to stay to the last play of the game. How dare you leave? And you know what I found out? I changed my mind when I had two beautiful young ladies, students, when I was a student, tell me, hey, do you want to go to our party with us? And I said, yeah.
You know, it's fun. You know,
It's either that or
honestly,
I'm watching. It's either that or I'm watching Brett Hodges play quarterback.
well,
I went with the females. All right,
let's not
and I think
forget.
that's just is what it is.
Let's also not forget that these aren't that, especially for this game in particular. It's not just a party; it's Halloween themed parties.
People have
So,
plans, yeah.
and
Again, here's my point. You want people to stick around? Put a better product on the field. Win. In this state, and whether that's fair or not, in this state, the standards are high. The standards are high. And if you want to be in the conversations with, in the big four, right? Florida. By the way, Florida's playing Georgia. There's probably casual people that didn't go to this UCF West Virginia game because they went to during Jacksonville said. It's a very competitive state when it comes to expectations. You could say everybody's spoiled in the state. That's fine. But a team that's 3-5 ain't gonna, people. You can't expect people to pack the house. This ain't Lincoln, Nebraska.
Well, Eric Edwards says, Eric, my understanding is the students on opposite sides stay longer and they pay extra or so.
You want them to pay more?
Well, no. He's asking a question, Lopez. He's asking a question. I will say two things. Number one, no, they do not pay extra. It's the student section, just like everything else. I should know. I did that in 2019. I was in that student section a lot. Now, I will say that from a quality experience standpoint, I actually think that side of the field is better than the side that we're seeing that's emptying all the time, because that side is the side that faces the Jumbotron. And I don't know about you guys, but I like facing the Jumbotron.
Well, that is the section that the students always try to go to more.
Exactly. Exactly. So I would say that, yes, that's opposite side of like the Jumbotron student section. They do stay longer. You are correct about that. But
it's a better side section. But listen, in fairness to UCF, they've studied this. It's not like everybody's acting like UCF doesn't look into this stuff. Could you do some things like maybe motivate them? Like I remember when I was a student, they used to make you go to volleyball. And if you stayed until the third set, you get free tickets to a football game. Maybe you do something like that academically. When I was in high school, one of my teachers was the basketball coach. He said if we went to the basketball game, we would get extra credit. All right. There's ways to do it. So maybe that's what you do.
I actually remember at Spirit Splash. I was at Spirit Splash this year because Spirit Splash this year got me another duck. The Terry Mohajer got up on stage, like as they all do with the pep rally right before they all go in the fountain and all that. And he was saying, like, he was emphasizing to the students, we want you there from the beginning to the end. That is what they're trying.
Well, I got an idea. Here's another idea. If you stay for the whole game, you get to meet our next person right here, Kyle Nash. You get to meet him in person. I would stay for a whole game if I was guaranteed to meet Kyle Nash. How about that, Kyle? What do you think of that idea?
I would certainly wear a tie for that occasion. I can guarantee you, gentlemen. Listen, I think an element to it. I heard some of the conversation in the digital green room there. I think part of the issue is it looks like the cabana section there is a bit more empty, but people are often going in to get into the shade and acquire their adult beverages therein. I think that's a factor, and unfortunately, that's the side that's most accessible to the camera. So that is what it is. The students, for the most part, did a decent job until certain things got out of hand. I will grant that.
No, that's a great point, Kyle. I'm glad you brought that up because I think a lot of people are picking on students, but and this might come off as an egg, but the cabana makes it look emptier than it is because, like you said, they're wandering around, and I know some people are going to be offended by this, but it's kind of a corporate crowd now. It's kind of corporate there. You need some money to be hanging out. That doesn't mean they don't care, but to your point, there's a lot. I've been to a cabana a couple of times. There's distractions there when it comes to beverages, food. It's kind of like what you see in pro sporting events with some fans that are just hanging out. It's not what it used to be, and that's just the way it is. You got to make money if you're UCF. I'm not saying you don't, but that's a valid point that I don't think gets brought up enough, Kyle.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Florida heat being what it is, that has to be accounted for, certainly. I mean, and who knows? Maybe some of the upcoming money will help alleviate some of these pains. Who knows?
But this is not the reason this team is 3-5. Let's get on to this team because at the end,
of course,
at the end of the day, win games, and everything else takes care of itself. By the way, this is a beautiful shot, Kyle, where you're at.
It really is.
And it proves my point, Kyle. You got mad at me when I said, hey, this is a beautiful day in Orlando, Florida. And you're proving it right now.
That's not the part I got mad at you about. I got mad at you as an alleged Heat fan talking about it's okay to leave early. I'm just saying.
Well, what did they miss? The people that left, what they missed, Kyle? Tell us.
But when you made your statement, it was still within reach. Don't hide, Eric Lopez. You know exactly where I'm at. Right. So does Ray Allen.
I think we knew the writing on the wall. All right, let's start. We said this, and we're going to pat ourselves in the back here, Kyle. On Friday's podcast that you can listen every week, Night Shift, we looked at a couple of categories. Time of possession. West Virginia won that battle today. I said, who wins the rushing battle wins this game. West Virginia won that battle, nearly 300 yards again on the ground. Now, what we didn't bring up, the turnovers. To me, those are the three that's the story of the game. What's your thoughts now?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and see, here's the thing. You mentioned the run game being won by West Virginia, and rightly so. But I think the element of that is them getting the ball back as many times as they did is why they were able to run it that much in the first place. And listen, I'm not trying to again, we're not back to forgiving the defense. But again, what is it? Only one game have they been on the field less than 30 minutes since the one they almost won last week for the alleged sixth best team in the nation, Oklahoma, right? So I think that's an element too. Moreover, the real thing, if I'm an offensive player, the real thing that shoots me in the foot and makes me just feel awful is look at that third down conversion rate, gentlemen. 75% on third down, 9 for 12. An excellent job moving the chains on the money down. And then you have the turnovers that cancel it all out. Get a 100-yard rusher for the third consecutive week. This offensive line's doing their job. And then it all goes away with a turnover. Just the whole situation such that it's been is just incredibly unfortunate. It's hard to really get people to understand that other than the turnover, it's the whole, Lincoln analogy. Hey, other than the fact your husband was shot, how was the play, Mrs. Lincoln? The whole thing is just a tough situation there.
Kyle, I do actually have a question for you, Kyle, that I do want to ask, because we had a question from a comment on Twitter from Twitter that I wanted to ask, get your opinion on with this. It is from at ebel90, and we thought that you would be an appropriate person to ask about this subject. He said turnovers are spirit killers for sure, but for once I'd like to see that front seven step up when hit with adversity. Do you feel like the front seven stepped up when hit with adversity during this game?
I mean, certainly not in the back half, right? Up front, listen, some runs did their damage, screens were successful, but we were aware that outside group was tough. The defensive tackles had a fantastic game. They would attempt to run inside. They would get swallowed, and not just by Ricky Barber and Lee Hunter. Alexander and John Walker up front there did their business as well, took care of things between, inside the defensive ends there, right? The interior. There was some good outside moments by Trayvon Mars-Brash that I like. Saliskar was a factor too, but those linebackers just had a little trouble sweeping over. There were a few good plays even by Nakai Martinez getting in there and making some tackles on some shorter outside stuff. But as the game wore, there was even a part of the game, I'd say around the early third quarter-ish, where West Virginia was kind of moving away from that and trying to attack other things. Unfortunately, they would open back up to that outside game and cause that a problem. So, yeah, obviously, the front seven is a fair criticism, but I think it's particular, again, to the outside, to the linebackers, that I think the challenge takes place. Tight ends have eaten well for the most part against the Knights in the air.
Boy, that's a great point. And I kind of feel like Oklahoma was now the exception to the rule, right? Didn't now last week showed more. This was more about Oklahoma not being physical enough, being able to run the ball, because everybody else is running the ball in UCF. And you mentioned the tight end's a great point. Teams have really attacked UCF in that regard, which Oklahoma didn't do it until, if you want to argue Drake Stoops as a slot receiver, maybe in that fourth quarter. But
I wouldn't, but I see where you're going.
You know what I mean? Yeah, I hear you. It's just, I think this is who they are defensively, Kyle. I mean, at some point, we just have to – you are what you are, right? As Bill Parcells used to say, you are what you're – I mean, this defense is what it is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I wouldn't put it that way from this standpoint of if you are what your record says you are, the defensive tackles don't matter and they won't be beautiful to watch next year. Wait, yes, they will. But here's the thing. Elo. Something we need to account for is we mentioned Oklahoma and that situation. We commented, and you might even have read about it in night class last week. Bing! blackandgoldbanneret.com. That offense, the Oklahoma offense, didn't really challenge the Knights in the outside run.
Right.
Maybe it's because they don't have the talent. Maybe I don't know what the choice was. Maybe Jeff Lebby shouldn't have been a head coaching candidate after all. If he missed that glaring and opening,
Ding, ding, yeah, that very well, very good.
But that all being said, I think that's an element too. And listen, this was West Virginia's bread and butter to run the football. If they were going to get a lot of yards rushing, that's fine. Heck, FAU came into this very building and gave the 2017 to 2018 team fits defensively, putting up
an NFL running back. It had an NFL running back.
Singletary kid who's still in the NFL. He's pretty good. I believe he's playing for the Texans right now.
Yeah.
Just like former UCF tight end Jordan Ankins was at one point. But I digress. The punchline is this, gentlemen. That lack of attacking that point is really what was different in the Oklahoma game. And it's the one game I would really argue among the Big 12 games was a weaker day, air quotes, overall for the defensive backs. They had a couple hiccup moments that led to touchdowns that made the difference in that football game.
What did Gus Malzahn have to say in the postgame, Kyle?
I mean, all he could preach was disappointment. He said it point blank. I don't think we're reinventing the wheel, or maybe we are. We're not, breaking any new ground in that you can't turn the ball over 4 times and expect to win, right? That's a tough go for anybody. So I don't know that you could put it much different than that. I mean, putting an optimism hat here perhaps, but the fact that you turned the ball over 4 times and you only lost by 2 scores could in itself be sort of an endorsement of some aspects. I feel like the game plan was strong today. I don't necessarily know that this was a game you could put on a coaching loss more than you would on execution. Oh, but Kyle John Plumlee fumbled the ball with that blitz from the outside, just like the one last week against Oklahoma. There's an obvious blitzing situation. The protection's the other way, and you didn't account for your blind side. That's just a thing that has to be read sometimes. And if you're going to get hit, you got to hold on to the ball. Easier said than done again. But at the end of the day, it was either mistakes or the football gods, right? You had that bounce up by Javon Baker. That was something out of the Boise State game. You had
again, Kyle. That was again. I mean,
the clamor in the press box is that half of John Rice Plumlee's interceptions, literally, aren't necessarily his fault, right? I can make an argument for the one where the receiver fell down. He also had 2 receivers in the same area. There was just a bit of chaos there too, but you can't chuck it up for grabs like what happened on the second interception.
Do you feel he lost his confidence as the game went on? I felt to me he lost his confidence. His throws were not sharp after the turn. In particular, the last interception. I mean, what did you see?
That could be argued for one throw in particular where I feel like Baker was breaking open, that he overthrew it. But I mean, before the game ended, the offense would score another touchdown. And I mean, listen, after 3 or 4 turnovers, you might lose your confidence a little bit. He's only human. But to John Rice Plumlee's credit, again, playing with a lot of heart. I saw some design runs where he did his job, also protecting himself well, I might add, but had some quality yards, scored a touchdown on the ground, made some relatively good runs. Because I look at this brace, and I feel like it's something out of a Terminator movie. It's crazy.
Let me ask you about the postgame. What was the mood like? What did you sense from Coach Malzahn and the players? Remember last week there was a whole hey, we left it on the field. I'm proud of these guys. We're going to turn it around. We're a good team. They're all positive and excited. But they didn't follow that up with a win today. What was the mood here, Kyle, moving forward? How concerning is it? Where is this team now mindset at 3-5? They've lost 5 in a row. What was the mood? Take me the temperature in that room?
Yeah, I mean, it was disappointment 101. There's nothing more I can add to that, Eric. The one thing I will say, and I'm kind of reading into it based on what Lokahi Paoli said, the veteran offensive guard who came to talk. I feel like there's going to be an element of a short memory, that's applied to this. They say defensive backs have to have a short memory. I think this may need to be transferred to the entire team in this particular instance. And listen, if the the bad news is you had 4 turnovers, you shot yourself in the foot. The good news is you had 4 turnovers, you shot yourself in the foot. And that means if you eliminate, which I would argue are correctable mistakes, and, maybe if the football gods don't make the ball bounce right up into a defender's hands, you have a shot where you can certainly win a football game against an Oklahoma State, for example, And listen, it doesn't hurt that you have an opponent that you aren't just kind of better than on paper. You're well better than on paper in Cincinnati. Ever since, Luke Fickell's left, they've not been even close to the same program. So I think it's a good tune-up opportunity. They'll get their first Big 12 win. You and I both know the critics out there, and no offense to you, Sultan of Stickball, but I know the first thing you'll say should they beat Cincinnati is that, it's just another American win, beat a real Big 12 team. If they go out and do that on November 11th against Oklahoma State, it would be awkward for me to hug Jordan Johnson after the game as one of the coaches, but nonetheless, it would be good for this team.
Well, the thing I said earlier about the Cincinnati game, you can't use the excuse about them having Big 12 talent, right? That you should be on an equal footing, quote unquote. So that's out the window. I'll say that much. Now, somebody here asking about you, Kyle, because they've said that you've questioned the scheme defensively.
I have earlier, yeah. And
they're asking you about this.
I accounted for that correction being made in the Oklahoma game if we didn't have full disclosure.
So, no, but they wanted to ask you about today. What did you think of the scheme today?
The effort was there. There was some aggression. I think there were some times where maybe they were sitting a bit far back, which is weird to me that you're more afraid of Garrett Green than you are Dylan Gabriel, which kind of speaks volumes in its own way, that you're more afraid of Garrett Green, who was injured at some point and banged up during the game and came back in the second half. You're more worried about him than an alleged Heisman Trophy finalist, but I'll leave that alone. I'm kidding, Eric. I'm kidding. But the punchline being, I feel like it was a bit of that mix of trying to be more aggressive. I mentioned Nikai Martinez getting in and attacking certain plays. Could they have used more of that aggression? That's hard to answer because the running game was West Virginia's bread and butter. We did expect them to attack with that, to have some success with it. But yeah, I don't necessarily think it was defensive scheme today that was the problem. At the end of the day, 4 turnovers, that defense on the field for over 30 minutes for the 4th time in 5 games. You can't have that.
We got a question here from Christopher Oxetine. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Do you think UCF wins a Big 12 game this season or in 2024? Kyle, we're putting you on the hot seat. Are they winning a Big 12 game this year?
Absolutely. That's when our UCF fans get a little too crazy here. Yeah.
Confidence.
Hold on. Let's qualify this for a second. Kyle, do you count Cincy and Houston as Big 12 wins because they're teams that are new to the Big 12, just like UCF is?
Now, Bryson, I think you've been spending a little too much time with Eric Lopez. You're moving the goalpost. That question as it was posed.
Yes, but let's face it, because there's the difference between the question and also the spirit of the question. And I think what a lot of people are going to want is a win over a team that was in the Big 12 already before the new additions.
I will decline to answer your version of the question until after the OK State game. Meaning, if they don't beat OK State, it's a hard no for me at that point.
Here's the good news, Kyle. We've just given you extra material for night class for next week's edition. For Cincinnati, that could be something you could address on the article. Does this count as a Big 12 win? G-Dot has the right answer. Let us count Cincy and Houston, please. Oh, man. That is good. My God, that's a pretty good line. That's gonna be a fun argument. I feel this is what we're reduced to now. This is good podcast material down the road. Does this count as Big 12 wins or not? Let's win. How about we win those games? Can we win that game? It's not like we played great in Nippert in the past.
The good news is bowl eligibility is still is still there, because look, if you beat Cincinnati and Houston, you just need to win one game against an established Big 12 team.
OK State or Texas Tech. Those are your choices.
Right.
All right, Jeff Sharon Jr. Good job on breaking that down there.
Hey. Come on now. He wasn't being ridiculous. He was using math.
Let's put it this way. I'd rather limp into a bowl game than not go to a bowl game at all.
Well, I would argue this too, Bryson. If one of those games were taken, I wouldn't call that limping. I would call that, to an extent, defying the odds. Listen, preseason, I have OK State as a loss. Preseason, I have Texas Tech as a loss. So for my money, if they pull off one of those to get your bowl game, like you're saying, I would argue that's encouraging to overcome adversity and getting better in the second half of the season, like Gus Malzahn said was the goal for this group.
How about we just win a game first? Can we get to like we haven't won a game since what, middle of September? Like, let's just win a game. Can we just win a game first?
Yeah, October has been problematic for victories. You're right, Eric.
Winless.
This is our longest. Is this our longest losing streak since like the winless season, or did we have one like this in like?
No, it's the longest since the winless.
And I think if you take that out, the next one is 2006 or something like that. I don't know. You guys are the historians, but yeah, you're right, Bryson. I mean, first time in 8 years, this many losses, certainly in a streak.
Yeah, no, that's where we're at.
I mean, Kyle, Eric told about his familiarity with it, but do you recall that 2016 homecoming game against Temple?
No, I don't even know that I was there necessarily.
Fair. That was a PJ Walker walk-off touchdown. They come back from 18 down to beat UCF. That's what the walk-off game.
Now, you guys are the historians. Like I said, I'm just the analyst.
How about all that? All right.
I don't have that historical context. Sorry, Bryson. My bad.
All right, so Kyle, where does this team go from here? Where do you go from here? You've lost 5 in a row. You've lost in many different ways. Where do you go from here, and how do you keep this team invested and hope that they don't just kind of like, well, let's pack it in?
Step one is see to it that John Rice Plumlee's confidence does not disappear, right? Remind him you've moved the change in this game. You had, I think this number is correct. You had more first downs in this game, you've had more third down conversions in this game than you have in the past 2 or 3 combined. I haven't checked the stat, but they certainly were better on third down in this football game than any other, maybe not even this season stat-wise, but we'll leave it at that. The punchline is there's that build. And then also I would make sure you keep working with RJ Harvey in the offensive line. Hey, you guys keep doing what you're doing. Protection's been relatively good. Sure, there were a couple moments where they sent more guys than maybe they had in a particular part of the trenches there, but that's going to happen in college football. Defensively, you do what you can to get that outside run contained. And we saw it against Oklahoma. Even if you give a cheap junk ball long, at least you have more time to get that back, and your defense has a better opportunity to make stops. I don't think that Cincinnati, for example, will be able to beat you over the top, so you should be attacking aggressively, playing incredibly optimistic, or opportunistic, I should say. But yeah, that's basically the key to me is there are statistical, literal, scientific positives that happened in this game. They were just all canceled by the turnover.
Eric Edwards makes a great point. It's a race now between Cincinnati and UCF to win the first old Big 12 game. Because Houston's won a Big 12 game. In fact, they beat West Virginia in that Hail Mary wacky game. Yeah. BYU's won a Big 12 game. Granted, it was Cincinnati. One of these two teams, UCF or Cincinnati, a week from today, will just be the winless.
Well, it's not a race; it's a collision course at this point, right?
Nope.
So,
yeah.
Well, they said old Big 12 game, so.
Oh, well, right. I didn't hear that part. Well, there you go. So that's what it is. I mean, yeah, the only one with an old Big 12 win is Houston. So it's a three horse race basically.
Positives, or maybe not positives, depending on your perspective.
Like I mentioned, those scientific positives, positives. What did you think about the UCF's time and possessions when they didn't turn the ball over?
They did have a lot of methodical drives, didn't they, Bryson? Yeah, I mean, just the opening drive of the game, I can make an argument, was the most crisp from a game plan and play calling standpoint. Heck, 2 of the interceptions, I feel like they were moving the ball pretty well and were going to threaten to score until disaster occurred, right? Yeah, that's a good question, Bryson. Listen, I said it earlier. I'll reiterate this way. Game plan wasn't the issue in this football game.
Last thing, Shaq performing pregame. Thumbs up, thumbs down, Kyle.
I mean, listen, I was never a fan of DJ Diesel myself, but what I can tell you is it did get a lot of garner a lot of positivity. A lot of people were stoked about it. A lot of people dug it. It seemed to be a big deal amongst the crowd. And who knows, if I know Eric Lopez, were he in that crowd, he would say that was the best part of the game.
Probably was. I mean, he said he did a video. He said he's coming back next year. I said,
Hey!
my advice to Shaq, just come in for an easier game, like an opener, something.
I mean, listen, from his perspective, he comes in, he leaves it, afterward, just after halftime. He's got the rest of the day. It's a hell of a gig.
Oh, that's a good point. By the way, Eric Edwards correcting us. BYU did beat Texas Tech last week, so they do have a win.
Okay, thank you, Eric. I wasn't sure.
So it's UCF Cincinnati there. All right, we're gonna let you go. Though this is a beautiful. Can you describe the weather? This is beautiful. This might be the best scenery.
Pretty gorgeous.
Oh,
I know you're doing this to beat the point that you have a reason to leave.
Trust me, those 18 to 22-year-olds that left early know what they're doing. Trust me, they're having a good time today. They got
Halloween parties to go to. I get it.
Don't act like you don't either, Kyle. Come on, we know better.
So not until after I finish writing Night Class on the
very good.
.com.
Very good. Tell us a little bit there. Night Class will be. We're going to let you go to write that because you and Matt Murschel now have to write about a 3-5 football team. You're going to recap this game for us and much more. The good news is next Saturday, Kyle, you get to see LeBron James in person. So better. By the way, somebody mentioned to us the Orlando Magic have more wins in October than UCF did.
Here we go. I mean, yeah.
Oh, hey.
And I'll put it in this defense. Houston officially has more 30-point losses in October than UCF. So there's that as well, right? Can I put some Rocket humor in there, right? Anyways.
All right, Kyle. There you go. Give me your send-off.
So, hey, listen, in honor, joy, and privilege, you mentioned me heading over to watch LeBron and the Lakers. Don't worry, I will still be writing Night Class. That's the plan in the meantime. So don't you fret there, UCF fans. But in honor, joy, and privilege to be your therapist once again this week. Until next time, friends, class dismissed.
That's Kyle down, literally from the bounce house within the stadium. Joining us here. Oh, man, that was good.
So, Eric, we got another question in from Twitter. At Steve bunch of numbers says, got beat by a mid-level QB from Tally. Gus has to own his decision. I rooted for JRP to be the, capitalized the, story as a two-sport athlete having a huge season. Shows the dual-sport athlete is almost impossible to pull off now. Add that to a bad defensive coordinator, and we get blown out.
Well, I know. I mean, there's been plenty of athletes that have done two sports. I mean, that's not, I don't think it has anything to do with playing baseball that's causing this. I just don't think the team's good enough. I mean, can we just accept that? It's just not good enough. Make whatever excuse you want. Do we have any Gus clips here before we wrap up, Bryson? Because by the way, the weather, I went outside at halftime. It was beautiful. So I'm in my room. I'm watching a lot of football right now. That's the good news. There's a lot of football out there. We're going to have a lot of content on Black and Gold Banneret this week. Reed Bryson, he is women's soccer, their season on the line Monday night against TCU. Bryson has a breakdown of the scenarios for UCF in the hopes of making the NCAA tournament, the number 6 seed in the Big 12 tournament in Round Rock, Texas. That will be taking place Monday night. That's on blackandgoldbanneret.com. Hey, we do have a number 1 ranked team in the country that won last night, men's soccer. We are a soccer school anyway, Bryson. Why do we care about this American football stuff anyway? Men's soccer won 3-2 with their backup goalkeeper. UCF with a win Tuesday night on Halloween can win the Sun Belt regular season title, be the 1 seed. Big game for Scott Calabrese and company there. Volleyball got spanked by TCU in 4 sets on Friday. They split with TCU in their 2 matches. They will go to Houston November 3rd and 4th for a big, continuing this rough stretch for volleyball. And cross country, the first UCF sport to compete in the Big 12 championships, that happened earlier this morning. Didn't go well, did it, Bryce?
No, it did not. UCF and the top finishers from UCF ended up finishing in 50th and 51st overall, respectively, out of 124 total competitors. UCF ended up finishing in 11th place overall, which actually ties for the worst finish that UCF has had in a conference tournament over the last decade or so. That said, though, I did watch it right at the beginning of the game, and it was a really it was a close bout, but a close bout for first place. But BYU actually ended up getting
BYU's doing that well at everything, man. Come on now. Anyway, let's move forward. You've got we have a Gus Malzahn clip, courtesy of our friend Trace Trelko. Here, Bryson, is that correct? Tell us a little bit here. We got the clip. You're setting it up. Here's Gus Malzahn right after the game on the loss.
Okay, congratulations, West Virginia. Obviously, we're disappointed losing at home the way we did. You look at the first half, they drive to 76, 71, 64, 17, 14. We were coming out of half and had the football, feeling pretty good about what they were trying to do defensively and how we could take advantage. I think we got down to the 32-yard line. We had like a deep post with a cross. Javon fell down. I guess JR didn't see interception, and then from then it was just up to the battle. The bottom line is you're not going to beat anybody for the most part. Turn the ball over 4 times. Turn the ball over 4 times. We had a 4th down. Okay, congrats.
All right, that's enough of the best clip. It's kind of courtesy of the day, how it's gone. But basically highlighting the turnovers being the issues in West Virginia and their drives, and their scoring drives, certainly. Whoa, really? How did that? Meanwhile, Kansas got the ball back, they just scored. I thought Oklahoma had the game. Wow, Oklahoma looked like had the game won, and somehow Kansas now has taken the lead over the Sooners. They're going for 2. They're not going to make it, but there's 55 seconds left. Wow, 38. So we might have a major upset there. But so that's interesting. What's funny about that is that game had a weather delay. That's why they're still going on. And what's funny, Bryson, is the UCF game actually aired. A portion of that game, UCF game, aired on Big Fox during the weather delay in that situation. So that is why. And what's funny is they've moved the Oklahoma game to FS1, which I thought was stupid. But whatever, that's their problem. But that's why that's your little connection there.
Hey, that might help the UCF West Virginia game get a little more numbers, though. Actually, how does that sort of thing work, Eric? You're the TV.
It's a mess. It's a mess. They're going to have to divide it and to different fragments of the game. So I feel bad for the TV guy that has to clean all that up. It's a mess. It's basically the word. I'm rewinding it because I want to see what happened in the game. Because Oklahoma, I flipped out because Oklahoma had just gotten a first down. And I think Kansas only had like 1 timeout left. So I just assumed OU would run the clock out.
Just so you know, by the way, looking at across the Big 12 scoreboard, Kansas State shut out Houston 41-0. 41.
Kansas State might be the 3rd best team, and they might be the 2nd. Who knows by the end of this?
No, yeah, Kansas State agreed. I mean, look, the fact that we actually stayed in league with Kansas State for as long as we did is another reason why I honestly feel like that this team has the talent level. They just hasn't been able to put it all together. And honestly, I think that that's where the pain comes, because in a season like 2015 and 2016, you know that the team is not in a very good state, or is coming out of a very good state. Here, it was a lot different. The coaches obviously didn't help with that, because the coaches definitely really engage the hype machine. But this one is where, you realize you think the team is good, and then in a way it might be good, but they're just not putting it all together. And that's really the most disappointing aspects of this team. It's not the worst, because there's going to always be worse. It's not 2015, but it's always hard to going from really hopeful to then just have it absolutely tank on you.
Dylan Gabriel's got to go 75 yards in 49 seconds. He's got 2 timeouts. They're down 5. They didn't put it away. Kansas got a big play and they scored. So we'll keep you updated before we wrap up here.
Eric Lopez is I'm calling both games moment.
And that there's just a flag against Oklahoma. I want to get people updated what we got coming up this week. Just because the football season is going a certain direction doesn't mean we stop. Look for some college basketball content. The season starts a week from this Monday. Check out all the YouTube channel for all the interviews on Media Day that me and Nick Porcelli have. I'm going to try to get a guest on to talk some college hoops later in the week. Also, in 2 weeks, the UCF Athletics Hall of Fame will take place. I'm working on a couple of interviews from a couple of the Hall of Famers in the class that we'll post on the YouTube channel. Might even do an article on that as well. So we do have a lot of content. Men's soccer trying to wrap up a conference title. Women's soccer trying to make a push for the NCAA. So there's still a lot going on. Obviously, UCF Cincinnati next week, 3:30 on FS1. We will have a night shift after that game. I'm not sure exactly. Bryson is going to be on location somewhere, and I might be on location. So I'm going to softball, fall ball. So I will watch most of that. But we'll figure it out. We'll have the shows there as well, Bryson. But this is going to be an interesting time for UCF there, and see how they bounce back against Cincinnati. What's your early thoughts on the Cincinnati game?
I think that it's a game that I would say winnable, but we thought this game was winnable too. So I will say that I think it's nice to see a familiar face. I think that's the best way to say that, because in a sea of new faces that we're seeing, I think I just like when you move to a new place in real life, it's always refreshing to see a familiar face, and I think UCF might enjoy that a little bit going into a game against Cincinnati, who some people can say it might be UCF's biggest rival now. People can argue that.
Game will be at Nippert, so we'll see. I think two teams that desperately are looking at that game as like a must-have. And again, now we know this too. Now, Bryson, if UCF wants to go to a bowl game, they have to win a road game, either at Cincinnati or at Texas Tech. They're going to have to win a road game down the stretch, and that's assuming they win both of their remaining home games against Oklahoma State on November 11th, and then the last one against Houston. So that's the scenario. There's 23 seconds left. Gabriel's going deep on 3rd and 1. There's a catch, but there's a flag. That might be a push-off against Oklahoma's receiver, and this might all come back. Oklahoma's in serious jeopardy. So there might be a positive here at the end of the day if Dylan Gabriel gets knocked off.
No, yeah. Oh, I think honestly, last year, if anything, last week, UCF proved that Oklahoma is mortal, and this year,
yes,
I think this week, Kansas is really pouncing on that.
17 seconds. So did they call it on Kansas or OU? OU's receiver pushed off, so it should be on him. Thompson, the receiver. If it's not against, well, that was a push. Oh, wow, they didn't call it against Oklahoma. They just got a gifted call. Wow. It was against Kansas, so they have the ball at the Kansas 27 with 15 seconds. Clock's running. Gabriel, in pressure, dumps it off. They're going to get it out of bounds, and they do at the Kansas 20 with 8 seconds. That's a horrible call by the Big 12 there. That was a push-off on the Oklahoma receiver, and it didn't they didn't call it. So that's why – but see, this is why I don't get caught up in calls in the officiating in games here, Bryson, because it's bad all over the place.
By the way, Eric, so you mentioned the Cincinnati game. That's going to be at 3:30 next week on FS1. Is this like the first time ever that UCF has had a majority of a season's games on Fox?
FS1 to be specific. Yes, correct.
Fox affiliated network.
8 seconds left. Gabriel, he's got to hurry. Throws underneath. 3 seconds left. It's going to come down to the last play of the game here, Bryson.
Oh, man.
How are you enjoying my play-by-play here?
How
did this turn into an Oklahoma-Kansas watch-along? I don't know, but...
Well, it's about the Big 12, it's good to see the competition, and Kansas is going to be a competition that we're going to see for the foreseeable future. So,
this is it. Last play of the game. Oklahoma at the 23 of Kansas. Kansas with 3 down linemen. Whistle, and I think Oklahoma is calling their last timeout. Iowa State up 10-0 on Baylor, by the way. Just what we need, more Baylor losses, Bryson. Good Lord, Iowa State.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
So here's a question, Eric, is that now that we're at this position that we are, do you feel like that this football program from a roster perspective needs to have like some kind of hard reboot, or in a sense, let a recruiting cycle to really build on being in the Big 12 before we might be able to compete?
They definitely need more material. I mean, I'll say that. I don't know about a full reboot, but they definitely need. I think there's a lot of more work to be done than I think even some thought. I really do believe that. I think there's a lot of work to be done because I don't think this was an aberration. This team just hasn't been. It is what it is. I mean, look what they've done since the Baylor collapse. So you could say it's about the Big 12 competition to some extent, but you should have won the Baylor game. And just some of these mistakes are what they are. But here we go. This is the last play, we think, of the Oklahoma-Kansas game at the 23 of Kansas. Neither team has a timeout, so this will do it. Sooners need a touchdown on this play. Gabriel gets pressured, lofts it up in the end zone. Incomplete. Kansas has upset Oklahoma. The Sooners have been knocked off. They're going to storm the field in Lawrence, Kansas. And we got a wide open Big 12 race, Bryson Turner.
I know a certain Lance Leipold fan that's excited about that.
Well, so Kansas has knocked off Oklahoma. Dylan Gabriel gets knocked out. Can't come up with a winning drive to win it. And Kansas wins a wild game, 38-33. That, to me, more than likely will knock the Big 12 out of the playoff picture, perhaps, unless they get some help. But
hey, look,
we got a wide open Big.
You gotta remember
Big 12 race.
You gotta remember how bad Kansas was like several years ago. If Kansas can make its way up from the depths like that, I feel like UCF can too. If UCF can too, it's possible.
So there you go. The Big 12. I think the point is this: everybody can beat everybody in the Big 12, except apparently we can't. I don't know. I think we'll get into this more. I think the rest of the year, Bryson. I think there's work to be done. Is it not? It's not impossible. I mean, TCU was an afterthought going into last year, and they made it to the Big 12 title game. So they need to identify a lot of things. They got to get better up front. Got to get a better quarterback, whether that's right now on the roster or not. I mean, there's just a lot of things. But it's year one. So we'll see. We'll get into this more in the coming weeks. But let's wrap it up here. At least we ended on a positive note for some of you. Dylan Gabriel losing. See? There you go.
Yeah, how about
that? So there you go. That'll do it for this edition. For Kyle Nash, for Bryson Turner, I'm Eric Lopez. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of Night Shift. Keep it on blackandgoldbanneret.com. We will keep you updated on all UCF sports, including football, basketball, you name it. It's going to be football, the number one ranked team. Go support them. Halloween, they got a chance to win a regular season title and much more. Until then, enjoy the rest of your day and night. Good night. Knights, unfortunately, losing to West Virginia on homecoming. Go Knights and charge on.